This week, we got another major headline in the Canadian natural gas story. Another major LNG facility is now being planned off Canada's west coast. This is just the most recent in a string of multi-billion-dollar investments in Canadian natural gas. And yet, while all of that money has flowed into this space, the stocks themselves have been relatively flat. So today, we're not only talking about this story, but also where it fits in the overall thesis. And of course, the specific stocks that I own to benefit long term. Let's start by talking about exactly what is in this deal. Well, it's a strategic memorandum of understanding between Hanwha Ocean and Canada Clean Power. They're planning on building a 12 million tons per annum export facility at Prince Rupert, BC. This is going to be a floating LNG facility. Having Hanwha Ocean on site is huge for the actual construction of this. Obviously, huge amount of understanding there. They've been doing this kind of thing and they do it well. But also, this facility is not another cedar or wood fiber where it's, half a BCF. At that size, they could be producing up to 1.6 BCF a day or taking in 1.6 BCF a day of feed gas, which is a major step if you consider the fact that our entire market today is between 11 and 13. So that's actually pretty big. Now, obviously, given the fact that this is a MOU, which is everyone's favorite word somehow this year, but it's an MOU, it would take a while. This isn't supposed to be a game changer, in the next couple of years. The projects that will change that kind of stuff are the multitude of American ones being built, Silisums, LNG Canada. Those kind of deals are going to be massive for the short term, for the next 5 years. But this thing then shows that there's actually appetite for continued investment longer than the next 5 years. One of the bear theses around Canadian natural gas was the idea of LNG oversupply. It was something that a lot of people talked about in 2025. I think with everything that happened in the Strait of Hormuz this year, a lot of that thesis has kind of died. There's been instead a much more strategic pivot towards security of supply, and that has led to a lot of investments in Canada, in the United States, and in other jurisdictions where you can get natural gas to market without going through one of those major choke points. This represents that story might have real legs. If this gets built, it won't be built until the mid 2030s. Seeing something like that, and again, we're looking at almost 16 billion US dollars on this deal specifically. So if you're talking about almost 16 billion USD, that's 20 plus billion Canadian, right? That is a huge vote of confidence in the long-term demand for natural gas. And that's honestly huge for the long-term valuations on some of these stocks. If you're no longer worried about maybe, closing ARBs, right? Where instead of then finding $11, $12 gas in Asia, like it was at the start of this year, sort of later last year, maybe you would drop that to $7, which would then give less room for Canadian natural gas to rise from our current $2 Canadian to where we want it to be at like $4. If instead you see a longer term growth in the demand cycle, that actually could be huge. And again, remember that this deal on its own is not the game changer. It's just the most recent in a string of deals. I think one of the most interesting in this string, most recent, was the Shell acquisition of ARC Resources. That shows that there's been a continued investment, not only in the Canadian midstream or the Canadian export facility, right? But an actual investment from international majors in Canadian upstream. We have not seen that. I'm not being facetious here. We haven't seen that in a decade. Real money flowing into Canadian upstream. And the vote of confidence that Shell gave with this deal shows how important all of these facilities could be. And the fact that they're buying in, and right now I just have a slide pulled up from their deck where they talk about the diversified price exposure, but having companies like Shell coming into the space, having international companies like Hanwha coming into the space, having investors like ADNOC, we talked about them the other day, they're looking at the space. We have obviously a bunch of other majors that all had those news reports coming out April and May talking about them looking to invest. There is now this rising tide of investments into Canadian natural gas, rising tide of valuations on the private market in the Montney, and a rising story of consolidation, something that most investors are underestimating right now. The biggest problem that we have in North America, and it's true of us, it's true of the Americans, is that we are too good at getting natural gas out of the ground. It's the biggest problem this market has. It's kept prices cheap, even with surging demand. Basically, everybody else looks at each other. We all understand that there's going to be a growth of demand long term, and we all overproduce. But the less competitors there are, the less that cycle continues to perpetuate. The less competition you have, the less you need to grow your production. The consolidation wave, while it might not be great for investors in those specific names, will be incredible for the long-term profitability of whoever's left. And of course, another major part of all this is the fact that internationally, natural gas is priced way higher than it is in Canada. And this year, despite all of the crisis in the oil markets, this year has had a massive, massive impact on the short-term demand for natural gas internationally. One of the most interesting things I've seen is a conversation about the underinvestment from third sort of parties. We're talking the consumers, we're talking the utilities in the natural gas space, in actually procuring natural gas. We saw the sellers are shipping it to refiners. Refiners are running at 100%. They're running as hot as possible. But then there hasn't been this increased demand from consumers who usually stock up this time of year. Specifically, I'm talking about Europe right now, who have seen incredibly low inventories for this part of the year. There could be a massive move in the price of LNG in Europe this winter. I don't see the future. I can't tell you exactly, but we saw this in 2022. And there is the potential, certainly, for a similar kind of move in 2026. And that's on top of the fact that long-term, the more of these facilities you get built, the better it gets for everybody in the basin, right? The better that story gets. So seeing this additional story, seeing that vote of confidence that this is going long-term is big for the projected free cash flow of businesses in the space. And of course, that takes me to the business that I own that I think is one of the best plays in here. And I own a couple of stocks, but I want to focus on Tourmaline today. Tourmaline Oil has had one major knock against it for the last couple of years, and it's basically that it is too much dry gas. And they produce it, and it is really cheap. And they don't really get a great price, right? They don't get a great price for their natural gas. And so the enterprise value of the company is sitting below $25 billion today. Stock price is down to $60 again. And I mean, if you've been here for a while, you know why that's almost infuriating to watch, because we have seen this thing trade up and down around the $60 mark and through the 60s basically for literally years. Now, as a long-term investor, that's a good thing for me. I don't actually have a huge amount of money. I had somebody ask me in the comments the other day, like, how are you still buying, right? You've been buying for the last 2 years. That is everything we do here on the channel. I get paid and I invest every single month. Week by week, I invest a little bit of money because that is the kind of growth stage that we are in right now, where we don't have a huge amount on the sidelines. It's not like I'm going to drop thousands of dollars any given week. Instead, it's a couple shares here, a couple shares there. And so Tourmaline has given me 2 years almost of basically flat price action to buy in, which long term I'll probably be very grateful for. But we're all human. Watching a stock that we own trade up and down within a range for years does start to make you question if you're right. And watching the short-term challenges the company's faced has obviously hit a lot of us in the confidence we have in our thesis. But if you look at the actual numbers for this company, and of course, I'm using our friends over at fiscal.ai for this. If you look at the numbers here, Tourmaline's looking pretty strong. I mean, last 12 months, we've got some kind of messed up PE and price free cash flow numbers. And it's not that fiscal is the wrong number. It's literally just that the way that they went around disposing of or selling their Peace River high assets hit their free cash flow and their earnings over the month. So the price free cash flow numbers are going to look really weird. But if you look at the next 12 months, I think it's a much more accurate prediction of where we are today. And the price target, which is analyst consensus, is set at $71. So you're already talking about an $11 movement in price. And that, with an $11 movement in price, would put your PE at 10, EV to EBITDA at below 6, and price free cash flow at 17. This is a stock that's paying you out a high dividend, almost 5% at $60. And again, it has fluctuated up and down around there. So if you're an investor like me who's investing in dividend payers, dividend growers over time, it's been pretty great. We go down a little bit, you see that the last couple earnings, they've basically struggled to beat on revenue and EPS because of the pricing, right? We're looking at the quarterly earnings here, right? We saw natural gas pricing wasn't great. If we zoom out a little bit, you see going out of 2021 into 2022, things got awesome, right? These are the revenue numbers, but revenue basically ran straight up alongside, again, that crisis in Europe where you had too little natural gas. You're willing to pay an awful lot more. Something that we could see repeated this year, depending on, of course, what exactly happens in the energy market over the next, let's call it 6 weeks. Maybe that's too optimistic that we'll have some sort of clear resolution in that time. But over the next 6 weeks, if we see, the pendulum swing one way or the other, that will definitely move the energy markets. But natural gas is going to be a laggard. LNG is going to be a laggard because, like we saw with all of the challenges, specifically at that Qatar LNG facility, you are going to see a long-term lag in repairing that. And LNG is a challenging thing to produce, a challenging thing to transport, and it's really challenging to store. So you don't have quite as much of it in storage. But still, you saw natural gas ran up, the stock earnings ran up. If you look at the 5-year, right, this is 2021 through 2022, stock price was trading in the 20s, 30s, and ran all the way up to higher than it is today. It ran up $48, 150% off of that run from, mid 2021 through November of 2022. So that run here, 2021 to 2022, was incredible. And this is what I've been talking about. And we started buying in sort of here in 2024, like mid 2024. Right? Like we're up maybe a few percent on our shares. I think our average is probably below 60. I would assume. I definitely was buying in the high 60s, but typically my money goes farther the cheaper the stock goes. So it makes it a little bit easier to buy a little bit more when it drops. But that flat line there has allowed so many people to accumulate shares, including Mike Rose. And then if you look at the long-term story for LNG, I mean, over the next couple of years here, we're talking about Silicums and LNG Canada Phase 2, right? That should be by the end of the decade, that you get another 4 BCF a day out of, again, depending on where we are based on projections, maybe 13 BCF a day of production. If we get a boost of growth from a higher oil price, could be up to 14, right? But then you take 4 out of that market. So that'll be a big impact. And that is expected to raise natural gas pricing in Canada by $1. We're sitting at, just under $2 today. Let's call it, $3.5 by the end of the decade. Oh, by the way, then there's this whole AI story that we haven't really talked about all that much on the channel, but the AI story is an energy story. Might not necessarily be a conventional energy, to use the government's favorite word, or oil and gas story necessarily, but it'll definitely benefit natural gas over the sort of 5 to 10 year time period, right? And then there's all sorts of stories around there. You're talking about the growth in electricity just in general. Electricity generation has seen an increased interest in natural gas. We've seen a shift in the regulations here in Canada specifically. So that could see a lot more sort of localized demand here in Alberta, Northwest BC. Those regions are seeing a lot of investment. I was sort of up in the Montney literally last weekend. You can see it. You can tell that there is money looking at this space, that there is investment going into these places. There are people willing to put money into this. So there is definitely that overall trend of growth in the general natural gas demand market, but really the story is LNG. And so those 2 big facilities are coming online. Then you've got Cedar and Woodfibre LNG. Those are smaller. We're talking smaller LNG facilities, both kind of in the style that this new, whatever we're going to call it, Canada LNG, floating LNG, Hanwha LNG that we're going to get in Prince Rupert. But both are a little bit smaller, still demanding half a BCF a day, which adds up. Again, if we take out another BCF a day of that market, that's 5. LNG Canada on its own is another 2, so that'd be 7. So again, at the end of the decade, that could be half the market is taken up by this LNG demand. And if we don't see huge ramping, because then we see, 1, 2, 3, 4 acquisitions of smaller LNG sort of feed producers, right? The Advantages, the Peytos, the Birchcliffs, maybe the Whitecaps, right? Like all of these companies that are already signed on to produce natural gas for these facilities. Well, then we're talking about a market that has, 4 or 5 fewer players to compete against, that has already done LNG Canada phase 1. We basically went through this whole story. We went through it's again very, very reminiscent of 2024 when LNG Canada is almost done, ready to get first shipments. Okay, this is when the market's going to start seeing that impact from the first 2 BCF a day, and everybody ramped up production. If we've already been through that, we already made that mistake in the Canadian market here in the Montney Basin. All those ownership groups, all of the executive teams, everybody knows that that was not the move, because we just watched the stocks go flat for all the years after that, all that hype for nothing. Well, now there's going to be a couple fewer producers. Now there's going to be a couple more long-term projects. Now there's going to be, the marginal demand of AI, the marginal demand from just general population growth, general electrification growth. I think it just all adds up to a structurally stronger Canadian natural gas market long-term. And again, I own companies like Tourmaline. I also own Peyto and Whitecap. I own a little bit of a couple of smaller players too. Obviously, I also have my sort of oil focused names who do produce natural gas. Doesn't necessarily go to these facilities all that much, but still they will benefit long term. So there's a general boost going to this market. And I think that more and more of these stories coming out is going to eventually start impacting the way the market values these companies. I think that the stock market is a forward-looking mechanism. And so even if this story is a 5, 10, 15-year story, you could actually see stocks move like they did in 2020 through 2021. You could see big movements in a shorter period of time in anticipation of the real boom. If you do see stories about, short-term LNG price spikes and stuff like that, and then you start to see more and more stories about long-term, there could be a run starting sooner than you think in a market that has been basically left for dead. And this is where I want to bring the question to you. What do you think of the Canadian natural gas producers? Who do you own? Are you in it for this 10, 15-year story, or are you looking at it as a short-term play on European gas demand or whatever other plays that maybe I'm not seeing here? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, if you like this video, please do like it. If you like what we do here on the channel, please do subscribe. And I hope I see you in the next one.